Okay, so now we turn the unit on. It works. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be connecting all of our lights to our switch panel unit that we installed in the last video. If you haven't seen that, check it out up here. And we're going to be installing our light bar also, or reinstalling, I should say. This is our 50-inch Rough Country DRL light bar, and we need to connect that to the switch panel also, but we're basically going to be reinstalling it all together just because I wasn't particularly happy with how it turned out the first time around. That's why there wasn't really a video pertaining to that one. So stay tuned and yeah. We get to wire up our spotlights and driving lights and stuff. And we actually bought the harnesses that are supposed to go on these. And this is option one. This is what it came with. So this is perfectly fine. But I'm gonna solder this just so you guys don't give me crap that I didn't solder it and do it properly. But yeah, I just connected all this just to make sure that the lights worked and everything. And I'd like to keep the connectors because that'll make it a little easier for servicing in case we need to take stuff off. So that's what it came with. Strangely enough, like this part of the connector came with the harness, so the lights themselves didn't come with any sort of connector. They just came with bare wires. And then it came with the crimp connectors for you to put the plug on the light. So I thought that was kind of weird. So we need to take this off. You always want to make sure to have your heat shrink ready. Aluminum wires. Kind of cheaping out in my opinion. And the actual lights are copper. Alright, so it's nice to have somewhere to hold the wire, so I'm just going to clamp it to the head release there. Oh, that's not ideal. The heat kind of shrunk the first part of it a little bit. Doing the same process on the other side. And before I forget this time, is that we're going to put heat shrink around this area too, because I forgot to put it on this one, and now we can't put the heat shrink over this area. So I'm probably just going to tape this one, or maybe try and depin this so I can fit the heat shrink in there. I don't know, but you're supposed to put it on now before you solder that. So then you have it ready for when you're done. Okay, so we got our two sets of harnesses for the driving lights, and we're basically just gonna cut off the plugs for this. Seems like kind of a waste, but I mean, we wouldn't need to buy wire anyway, and this already has nice sleeving on it and the plugs, so whatever. I'm gonna try and run these through here, kind of following the hood latch cable. Okay. So probably this should be more than enough. So we just cut all this off. So now we have our length more or less set. And actually I'm gonna take 2 of these out for now, because if I have all 4 there, I'm not gonna be able to tell which one's which. And we're gonna use these 2 to wire up our long range. So that'll go there. Let's figure out where to zip tie them once I'm all done. So the nice thing about this box also is that since this whole board is already grounded, you don't have to ground the lights or whatever you're installing to the box. You can just ground it, you know, wherever. Like if I had lights installed in the rear, I could just ground the lights straight to the back on the chassis somewhere, and then just run the power wires to the relay up here, and that's all you need. But I was gonna ground these off like right on the front bumper, but I don't know if that has continuity to back here because it's all powder coated. Yeah, there's already some nice big grounds by the fuse box, so I'm just gonna use these. All right, we got our wire length pretty close now. So now we need to see if we can fit 2 wires in through one of these grommets on here. I'm gonna wire 2 lights to the same relay just because that's how the harness that we bought is set up. So if you look at the harness that's meant for those lights, both lights come into the same relay, and that's a 40 amp relay, and this is a 40 amp relay, and it's 30 amp fused, and that's 30 amp fused. So this is exactly the same. So it should be just fine wiring it up together. I tried to look for the wattage of the lights themselves, or the amperage, but I couldn't really find anything. So I'm just gonna go off the wiring that they provided for them. So so we have this like weather tight connector thing, and it's got these plugs for whatever wires you're not using. I guess just remove one. Good enough. And I should have put this on before putting the wires through. So then this should just screw on back here. And this will fit in there. We should put the terminal on here now. The kit provides you with the spades that are meant for those terminals, but they're only one size, so hopefully this will fit together too. Yeah, that just barely works. Okay, so we're gonna crimp this one. And we're gonna put some heat shrink on this too. So I should add, we're only really using this harness for the lights because we had already bought it. like I said, it was about 30 bucks each or so. So it was like 60 bucks together just for the wiring and the plugs and stuff. But you don't have to do that. Like I said, the headlights, the lights themselves didn't come with any plugs. They just come with bare wires at the end. So the most cost-effective thing, if you wanted to save money, would be just to get a roll of wire from like AutoZone or something, and then solder that to the lights, and then just run that to here, and that'd be the same thing. I mean, you'd have to get your own like wire loom or something like that. I mean, I guess you don't even really have to do that, but you know, this already came with it, so that's why we're using it. Okay, I'm gonna get the floodlight wiring in place now. All right, so same deal with these basically. I think these are ready to go in here. This is supposed to go behind there. I gotta say, this part's kind of tricky, getting everything to line up and fit together right. All right, so that's our power wires. Now, for our grounds, all right, and that's our ground circuit completed, so everything should work now. Okay, so now we turn the unit on. So let's try 2. Nice. And 3. It works. Okay, so now putting the labels on our switches. And 3 should be our spotlights. And then 1 I programmed to be a momentary switch, because I want that one to be our winch whenever we get that. This is where we ran the wire for our light bar originally. This is in the driver's side cowl area. Part of the issue with this is that wire is like really thick. Since it's a DRL light bar, there's 2 circuits going to it. And they did minimize it by using the same ground. So there's 3 wires and where there could have been 4. So that helps a little bit, but it's still a really large gauge cable to be running like under your A-pillar and stuff. So one of the things I want to try to address is trying to ground the light bar like on the rack maybe and see if that works, because that would eliminate a wire coming down here altogether. And then the length of the cable where they put this connector it's just too short. I want to say it's just generally too short, but I don't know if it's just our application, but to me it feels like it would be too short for any vehicle in general for this to like clear the A-pillar area, because this barely clears and the cable ends up sticking out. So we're going to try and address that here. Next thing would be to see if I can get the ground wire out of here. I'm hoping that the wire inside here is like double insulated, so there's like 3 individual wires in here encased in the black casing, because if there's not, then that might be an issue, but this should be. See if we can get this plug off. Yeah, okay, so we're good. I don't know why that looks so gross, but there's 3 individual wires in there. So what I want to do is basically cut this black wire a little shorter and then put a ring terminal or something on that so we can ground it straight to the rack, and that way we'd only have 2 smaller gauge wires to run down the A-pillar, and that should minimize how messed up our trim gets and our windshield molding and stuff. So that was another issue on the other side, is I tucked it in there like this, and the top windshield trim just didn't sit in place anymore. So yeah. All right, we have the light bar off now, and basically what I want to do is just flip it around so that the wiring comes down the driver's side A-pillar. Since our fuse box and everything is on this side now, it wouldn't really make sense to leave it on that side and have to run it across the engine bay. One thing I will note about this rough country DRL light bar is we had to do quite a bit to get it to shut up. At about freeway speeds like 60, 65, it makes a really, really loud whistling noise. And I noticed that if you like block some of the air, it would kind of get quieter. So then I figured I would try to like clamp some of these fins together and see if that would help. Didn't really help. It just shifted the noise up higher. So it made the noise come on at like 70, 75. So then I resorted to good old duct tape. And that's what's worked so far. So yeah, I don't know what else to try. I don't like the duct tape on there, but I also don't like an ear-piercing scream in my ear when we're trying to drive down the freeway. Another idea I had was to try and make like a wind deflector or something for it, which I bought a piece of aluminum for that, but I haven't really gotten around to trying it. But I guess now might be as good a time as any. So I was gonna put this on here and have like the bottom edge sticking down, so maybe that will act as like a wind deflector to keep the air from hitting the fence. I don't know, but I guess, well, if we have it off, might as well give this a shot. Okay, I'm gonna put this in this position, and it's almost like the perfect size, but it's just a smidge too long. So I'm just gonna mark about how much I need to grind off. Okay, so I'm thinking grinding the light bar like right up here somewhere where it's gonna be relatively well hidden. And then these wires, I'll probably have to drill and make little mounts to zip tie these two. And then just hug this tube all the way back and then probably drop in through here and then come down here through the A-pillar, which should go a lot better since this is significantly thinner than what we were dealing with before. Just got kind of concerned because this white wire is significantly thinner than the red wire. And I got scared for a second and thought that maybe they used the black wire as the power wire and the white as the ground, which would be stupid because unless you're working on a house, which I know this is pretty big, but it's not quite as big as the house. Black should always be your ground. But I think the white wire is smaller because this is the DRL circuit, which is, I'm guessing, less amperage since it's a lot dimmer. And also it's like less than half the amount of LEDs as the main light bar. So I think that's what's going on there, but I guess we're gonna find out. So yeah. All right, now that we have our wiring out, we have a better idea of how much we need to extend it. So it's gonna go about there. So we need like another 3 feet or so. So we're just gonna take that off the old harness. Okay, now we have more than enough wire to get us to the fuse box. So we're just gonna tape it in place and see where we need to cut it. And this is what I didn't really show on this side. The cowl has this rubber like gasket thing on the very corner that meets up with the fender. You can just pull this out of the plastic piece and slide it out, and that'll give you all the room you need to tuck it in. And you can tuck it under the A-pillar and it'll come out right under there and be nice and well hidden. All right, and then this little foam piece also just comes out of the cowl, and you can tuck your wiring in there. All right, I think we're gonna come in here something like this. So that means we should cut it about there. All right, so now we got our lifetime supply of heat shrink from Amazon, of course. Just gonna use this to try and clean up the wiring because we're gonna have to like tuck it in pretty close to the trim and under the A-pillar and stuff, and it looked kind of janky if it was just 2 wires like that. And this will add some protection to it also. All right, so the heat shrink thing didn't work at all. Huge waste of time and waste of money too, I guess, because we bought a whole roll just to try and wrap this whole section, and we ended up reusing some of the braided sleeve from the relay side. Yeah, lesson learned. You can't push more than like 6 inches of wire through heat shrink. The wires from this side of the board, because there used to be a plug between the relay harness and the light bar, and the wires on this side of the plug were like 1 or 2 gauge smaller than the wires on this side of the plug. So when I tested a piece of 3/16 heat shrink on these, it fit in just fine, but when you test it on this side of the wires, it doesn't hardly fit, much less you know, 8 feet of it. So we opted to just reuse some of this braided sleeve, which is very helpful that it like scrunches up and changes shape. So that is extremely useful for feeding wire through, because you just kind of like snake it all the way through, and it's significantly easier. Okay, before I go drilling holes and stuff, I want to check something. We need to have a ground for our light bar, but I'm just gonna check and see if the chassis of the light bar itself is part of the ground. I doubt it. This isn't like a super high-end light bar or anything, but it'd be worth checking, because then if it is, then we don't need to actually run a ground wire. All right, so this is a multimeter, which is a good tool to have if you're working on anything wiring related. I have it set to check for continuity, so that just basically means if 2 wires or 2 surfaces are connected, it'll beep and tell me that that circuit is complete. Like say, if you're checking a wire at one end of the car to under the dash or something, if you connect both ends with the probes, it should beep. That'll tell you it's connected. If it doesn't beep, that tells you that that wire's broken somewhere along the line. So I want to check if this ground wire is connected to the body of the light bar. And it is not. Kind of figured it wouldn't be, but it's worth checking. So yeah, we do in fact need to connect that ground wire. So let's get to drilling some holes. It's got some smaller ring terminals. These are just some coax cable clamps I got from Lowe's. Okay. Okay, we're gonna stop saying okay. And so, okay, so now we're done with now we have the wire all nice and tucked away. You can't see it at all from this angle. Much cleaner. So I wanted to do it in the first place, but I was lazy the first time. So here we are now. Now we just need to tuck the rest of this under the A-pillar here. It looks like there's like no room to do anything here, but there actually is room under this. This is just like a plastic cover. So this is the channel you want to get the cable into, and you just have to pry up on this trim piece to unclip it from that hole, and that should give you enough room to work with. And you just need to tuck it in this corner, and you just keep working it all the way down. Good as new. This light bar is a DRL light bar from Rough Country, so I kind of want to wire the DRL circuit of it to turn on with the DRLs in the headlight. And to do that, I unplugged the headlight and I was looking for which wire had power while the DRLs were on. That's this terminal right here. It goes to this green wire. This top corner terminal also has power for the DRLs, and I believe it's because there's like a dim LED and a bright LED in the DRLs, and this is for the bright one. and that one comes on when the headlights aren't on. So when it's just the DRLs, it's this terminal, and when the headlights are on, the DRLs are dimmer, and that's this terminal. All right, so we got our DRL wire spliced into the headlight. Now we plug it back in and hope that that works. So far, yeah, I'm actually really impressed with the Hella spotlights. They reach really far. They reach further than the light bar, and the light bar was significantly more expensive. But I think the light bar is meant to have some like floodlight pattern to it, so that's why it doesn't like reach quite as far. Whereas the spotlights are like dedicated, you know, spotlights. Another thing is, yeah, they're not so great in the dust. The yellow driving lights don't seem to be helping a whole lot. The driving lights and the spotlights are both Hella off-road lights, but the driving lights really aren't all that bright. Like I feel like they should be a bit brighter. Side review of the Amazon fog lights. Complete crap because they keep turning off and overheating. You can see the children are having fun. All right, that concludes the install of our switch panel. Finally got all of our lights connected and they're all working. I gotta say I'm kind of disappointed in the driving lights from Hella. They're slightly dimmer than the stock headlights, which, I mean, for a $60 pair of lights, I can't really expect them to compete with, you know, $1,000 set of lights or however much those cost. However, I am pretty impressed with the spotlights from Hella. They have a really long throw and light up pretty well. It was kind of hard to tell in the comparison, but they reached all the way to the mountain. Like there was like visible light on the mountain when we had these on. The light bar, as far as like the spread and throw on the light bar, it's pretty much on par with like other light bars I've seen. I think it's a pretty good value, especially since it has the DRL function, which really sets it apart from other light bars because you can actually use it in everyday traffic and it sets you apart a little bit. With that, there's still the question of I'm not entirely sure if it's legal or not. Like I said in the last clip, in Arizona, as long as the light is above the hood line, it needs to be below like 300 lumens or something like that, which I don't really have any way of measuring. One thing I could tell though is that the light bars DRLs aren't as bright as the DRLs in the headlights. So I figure it's probably all right, but I guess we'll have to wait and see if that becomes an issue later on. Our other lights that we had gotten before was these Amazon fog lights, which look cool and everything, but we found that they keep, seems like they keep overheating and shutting off momentarily. So that was kind of annoying. Kind of annoying, like somebody over here. Yeah. And the other issue that we had with the light bar was that it was really annoying at like freeway speeds. It just gave out this high-pitched screeching noise. And I'm happy to report that the little wind deflector thing that we put on did work. So at any speed, it's just perfectly quiet and normal. I'm not sure, I think it has more to do with the way we installed it, because most other racks that I've seen have some sort of like wind deflector under the light bar and the wind will just go over it, which ours is kind of the other way around. It has the main bar where it attaches, which is over the light bar, and there's nothing really under it. So that air passes under it and tends to curl up behind the light bar, and that's what was passing over the fins, making that whistling noise. And now that we have that little deflector at the bottom, the wind isn't getting like pushed up behind the light bar, and so it's perfectly quiet. So thank God. I mean, the duct tape was working, but I was hoping we didn't have to leave that on there. So yeah, it looks like we got everything squared away. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Garage 23.